Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into a Bracketology Update 2.0. It is a little bit warm out today. This is the first time in a while here in my area where it's been above 50 degrees, so feels a little bit like spring, but it is only early February. It's going to get cold again. It is just February 3rd at this point, and I am doing my second update. Probably going to do one of these every week. Likely we'll do them either Thursday or Friday, but because I haven't done one in a while, I figured I would do one here on Monday. So taking a look at the bracket matrix, which is where we always start, you do have three consensus number one overall seeds. You can see all 91 brackets have these three teams as one seeds. It is Auburn, Duke, and Alabama. The SEC is loaded this year. Alabama's on a pretty impressive streak. They've been like the number one team for over a month now. Duke, they're in a horrible conference. I mean, Duke is certainly a good team, but I think if they were in a better conference, they would, to me, their seeding and record is overinflated because of how easy their conference is. Iowa State, I know, just lost. So we'll see if they maybe move down. You've got Florida. Florida also just lost to Tennessee. They only scored 44 points. A really ugly game. Houston just lost, although Houston is loved analytically. They've always got a really good defense. Tennessee, really good on defense. And then Marquette as a 2 seed. Michigan State, the first Big Ten team to appear. Purdue, they're on a really nice run. They're a 3 seed with Michigan State. Kentucky, really good offensive team, really bad defensive team, kind of same thing as last year, which didn't work out for them if we remember the tournament. And then Kansas right on the 3 line, kind of almost under the radar this year. Kansas is. You've got Texas A&M, another SEC team on the 4 line. Oregon, maybe a little bit overrated to be a 4 seed for me with Oregon. Mississippi State and Wisconsin on the 4 line. On the 5 line, you've got Ole Miss, Illinois. Illinois is very streaky. Illinois went on a really good run, but recently they did beat Ohio State yesterday, but it's been they've had some really inexplicable losses at home. Arizona also on the 5 line, so that's the 5v12 matchup. I would probably say in a 5v12 matchup, everyone's looking for upsets. Ole Miss could potentially get upset in a 5v12 game. Louisville's kind of had a massive turnaround there. Part of that is also the ACC. You might see some ACC teams get overinflated overinflated seeding just because of how easy the conference is, and they might lose early depending, on what seed they get. Memphis on the 6 line in the American. That's the first American team. Michigan, they've had a solid bounce back season after being a disaster last year. Texas Tech got the huge win on the road at Houston. They're on the 6 line, but this was updated February 1st, so I would imagine Texas Tech's probably going to be on the upper 5 line, possibly a low 4 seed. I mean, you win on the road at Houston. It's really good for your resume. St. John's has got a really good record. They only have 3 losses out of the Big East. You've got Missouri, Maryland, Clemson. Clemson is a team. I think they're like 18-4 right now, but it's the ACC. UCLA is a 7 seed. Utah State, the best team out of the Mountain West, always a competitive basketball league. Gonzaga, a little bit down again. Gonzaga's had a few years now where they've been They're on the 8 line at this point. You've also got St. Mary's out west as well, who's having a decent season. They're a 9 seed right now. Gonzaga, Creighton, and UConn. UConn, certainly we wouldn't expect them to three-peat, that's for sure. You've got West Virginia on the 9 line, St. Mary's, Baylor. Baylor kind of having a down year. The Big 12 is definitely down compared to where it was a year ago. Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, they got off to a really good start being in the SEC. I thought they were like 13-0 at one point. I said there's no way analytically they were never going to keep that up. Georgia, surprisingly, has had a good year. Ohio State kind of hanging on right now. Analytically, they are liked. San Diego State. You do have Pittsburgh as an 11. Texas kind of had a down year. Being in the SEC doesn't help the move to the SEC. You've got New Mexico, North Carolina. I don't know how North Carolina is in these. They're 13-10. And yes, analytically, they're better than their record. But in the ACC being 13-10, there's no way you should make the tournament. And then you have UCF, believe it or not. Imagine they get in. And then just taking a look at some other teams. Drake right now is 18-2. They've had a lot of very close games, though. Drake has kind of disappointed me a little bit, even though they're 18-2. UC Irvine, good defensive team, not great offensive team. Not typically the team you see upset. Although in a 12v5 game, I guess anything can happen. McNeese is another team that's kind of disappointed me. They were by far the best team going into this year in their conference. I mean, they've been good, but there really hasn't been dominance. Liberty, Arkansas State. I was looking at Arkansas State. I was like, I'm surprised. They've got a really good record. Yale, Samford, Akron. There's a lot of teams in the MAC that just score a ton of points. I think Akron is one of them. Utah Valley. These are all the auto bids, obviously. High Point. High Point's an interesting team, possibly in a 3v14 game. Lipscomb, Northern Colorado. You've got Cleveland State out of the Horizon. The Horizon is always a mosh pit. There's really never any dominant team. And then just the rest of the teams there, the 16 seeds. And then some other teams you can see right now in the bubble: Arizona State, BYU, Wake Forest, Nebraska, and then other automatic qualifiers, some big ones: George, Mason. They've had a really nice season, and just some other ones right there. But getting to the actual analytic rankings, you can see, believe it or not, right now, Houston, even with the 4 losses, even though they're, potentially on the 2 line, maybe, they're the number 1 overall team in terms of adjusted efficiency, the 5th best offense, the number 1 defense. Auburn, the number 1 overall best offense, 20-1 at this point. They are the clear number 1 team in college basketball. Duke, analytically, they're going to grade out very well. Part of that is being able to, face bad teams, especially on the road in conference. They're sitting at 19-2. They're a top 10 team analytically, offensively, and defensively. Florida's a complete team. They are sitting at 18-3. I'm surprised Florida is ranked higher above Alabama, but it's just by like 0.10 or 0.0010. Tennessee, see, this is an outlier with Tennessee, 52 best, most efficient offense. That's a team that I'm probably not going to be picking to go very far if you're outside of the top 50 in terms of offense. Normally, when you pick like your Final Four, you want teams that are at least top 15, top 20, and at least in both offensive and defensive efficiency. Illinois, believe it or not, with 7 losses in the Big Ten, analytically sitting at number 7. Texas Tech, they've certainly had a really good run. One of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to look at like how teams have done recently. So like go back to maybe the 6th and see who are the hottest teams, because I haven't really updated this in a while. I don't know. Will it load? Do you have to update it? So these are the most hottest teams within the last 3 weeks. Houston, even with that loss, still the number 1 team in college basketball. Missouri is on a very nice run. Purdue, Auburn, Florida, St. Mary's, Duke, Texas Tech, Louisville, and Wisconsin. Wow, Wisconsin, they went through a lull midseason. Michigan State has definitely racked up the wins as well. St. John's with the 133rd ranked offense, but the number 1 defense. Wow. That's just kind of an outlier thing, the last 3 weeks. But yeah, so those are some teams playing very, very well. New Mexico inside of the top 25. And taking a look at the tournament. So this was updated like 4 days ago, so this is a little bit outdated. But you can see the bubble, Oklahoma. We'll see with Oklahoma, obviously being in a tough conference. I think they'll probably end up missing the tournament, honestly. Pittsburgh, Ohio State, and Texas. Last 4 buys there: New Mexico, San Diego State, North Carolina, UCF. The last 4 in, so they'd have to play in the first 4. First 4 out: Xavier, VCU, BYU, and Arizona State, and then Indiana, Nebraska, SMU, Wake Forest, next 4 out. So taking a look at this bracket, you do have Auburn as the number 1 overall seed. They'll get to play in Atlanta in the South, of course. They'll be taking on either Utah State or Baylor. Those are 2 feisty teams for 8 and 9 seeds. You've got Louisville taking on McNeese in a 5v12. Oregon versus Utah Valley. Pretty good draw for Oregon there. Maryland versus New Mexico or UCF. Kentucky versus Northern Colorado. Kentucky has a 3 seed. They're going to get upset again. I don't know. 7v10. UCLA versus Georgia. Houston facing Towson as the 15 seed. Moving on to the Midwest, Indianapolis, Bama, the number 1 overall seed, taking on Creighton or St. Mary's. Though I feel like those are good 8-9 seeds. I mean, Creighton this year doesn't really impress me, but they've, we'll see. Arizona, Arkansas State. Arkansas State is a 12 seed. I mean, Arkansas State's had a good year. I never expect them to be a 12 seed. I think they'll end up on the 13 line, honestly. You've got Wisconsin versus Akron. I could see Akron winning that game outright, just because the pace at which Wisconsin plays, if Akron hits some shots. Ole Miss versus UC Irvine. UC Irvine as an 11 seed. Wow. Purdue and Cleveland State. Missouri, Pittsburgh, Marquette as a 2 seed, and Bryant. The West, you've got Iowa State sitting as a 1 seed right now. They did just lose. It wouldn't surprise me if they move down to the 2 line. Houston might move up, although they just lost. But you've got Iowa State as a 1 seed facing Gonzaga or Vanderbilt. Just because of the pedigree, I'd rather face Vanderbilt if I was Iowa State. Memphis taking on Drake. That would be a fun 5v12 matchup. A&M and Sanford. Texas Tech and Texas. So an interesting matchup there. Michigan State, UNC Asheville. St. John's is a 7 seed taking on San Diego State or North Carolina. North Carolina right now a play-in, but they just got crushed by Duke. I don't think North Carolina is going to be in the tournament. Tennessee as a 2 seed. That's probably where they're going to end up. They might end up a 3 seed, though, because of the SEC. I don't know what their schedule is, but they could definitely lose some games taking on Florida Gulf Coast there. Remember Florida Gulf Coast? Yeah, people will pick them to upset if they get in. You've got Duke taking on Marist, the pollster. Yeah, Duke. You've got UConn taking on West Virginia. Illinois taking on George Mason. Mississippi State and Yale. Michigan, Oklahoma. I think they faced each other already once in the regular season. Kansas versus Jacksonville State. Clemson versus Ohio State. And then Florida taking on Norfolk State. So, and then you look at the breakdown, SEC with 13 teams. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty realistic, honestly. The problem with the Big Ten is they've just got a bunch of like borderline tourney teams. They really have no powerhouse teams like the SEC does. They only have 9 teams. Big 12 this year, it's been a step down for them. The ACC, I'm surprised they even get 5 teams in, honestly. Well, that's because North Carolina. Big East with 4 teams, Mountain West with 3. West Coast Conference, pretty much always, it's going to be St. Mary's and Gonzaga. So that is the update for this bracketology. It wouldn't, like right now when it comes to the 1 seeds, Auburn, Duke, you have to say... I mean, Auburn, I don't think it's guaranteed to be a 1 seed, but they are 20-1, so they have, I would say, wiggle room where they could have 2 losses and still be a 1 seed. That's why you'd have to say they're pretty locked into a 1 seed at this point. And being in the SEC with that schedule, I mean, they could lose games. It's just they kind of have some breathing room right now. Duke, I think, is probably going to stay a 1 seed unless they have some catastrophic loss. Just because the ACC is so easy. I mean, I've seen Duke's schedule; they're going to be favorites in every game. You've got like a road game at North Carolina to end the season. Maybe if North Carolina's on the bubble, that could be a tough game for Duke. It's not like Duke is this crazy powerhouse this year. They're a good team, but it's just they're in such a horrible conference. Alabama, I could see dropping down. Alabama's got a really good resume. They always play a very tough non-conference schedule, but it's just they already have, I think at this point, 4 losses, and so you lose a few more games, you're probably going to drop from a 1 seed, even if you're in a tough conference. Iowa State, I think, is already at this point a 2 after their loss. But who moves up? Well, I would say Houston, but I don't know. I mean, I think the 1 seeds right now, it looks like it's going to be Auburn, Duke, probably Alabama staying there, and then the 4-1 seed is probably Houston, honestly, if I had to guess. You could make an argument for Florida, but they just got crushed by Tennessee. Maybe you could make an argument for Tennessee. I just don't like Tennessee's offense. Marquette, I don't think has any chance of getting a 1 seed, honestly. But like when it comes to getting onto the 2 line, it wouldn't shock me at all if Purdue got onto the 2 line. They're playing really well right now. Being in the Big Ten, there's winnable games there. Kansas, you're going to have opportunities to get onto the 2 line. So we'll have to see. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.